Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here for one of the most treasured days at Albany Law School, Kate Stoneman Day. Today is the 25th anniversary of this tremendous tradition, which began in 1994. Thank you all for being here in the audience. I extend to our guests and our award winners a very warm welcome and their family. We are especially privileged to have so many esteemed members of the bench and the bar with us tonight. Thank you for all your continued support of Albany Law School. For those of you new to the Kate Stoneman program, you are in for a real treat. This event celebrates the goal of gender equality in the law. It is named for the first woman to graduate from Albany Law School, Catherine Kate Stoneman, class of 1898. Kate Stoneman challenged the discriminatory laws of her day and became the first woman admitted to the practice law in the state of New York, and that was in 1886. In 2009, Kate Stoneman was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls, New York. On a personal level, I always feel particularly honored to be part of this day. It was 18 years ago that I visited Albany Law School as a faculty candidate, and my visit coincided fortuitously with Kate Stoneman Day. After staying for the program, it became quite clear to me that I had found a home. I knew then, during the 2001 Kate Stoneman festivities, that I would indeed accept the offer to teach, and even after teaching here for 18 years, I still get goosebumps for every Kate Stoneman Day. It's such an honor and inspiration to be part of the celebration today. Tonight, 3 women will join our prestigious circle of Kate Stoneman Award recipients, bringing to 86 the total number of extraordinary individuals honored since the program's inception in 1994. And yes, that was 25 years ago. To celebrate our 25th anniversary tonight, we've added several special touches to our programming. One special touch was to take a group photo this afternoon of all of our former honorees, those wearing the corsages, who could be in attendance, and we will display that photo in the law school. And at this time, I would ask that all of those former Stoneman Award recipients who are with us here tonight to please stand. You all continue to amaze and inspire us in what you do. I'd also like to acknowledge 3 men in the room who helped to make today possible, most notably Jeff Sieber. You can stand too. Chris Colton. And Peter Padone. Without these 3 men, today's celebration would not have been possible or as pretty. Special thanks also to our own Professor Andy Ayers and our Dean and President Alicia Willette, both of whom I will introduce to you shortly. A few more thank yous are in order first. I want to recognize the support of the Women's Law Caucus, co-presidents Elizabeth Murad and Katrina Young, who are both here with us today. And finally, we owe tremendous thanks to the larger honorary Kate Stoneman Alumni Committee. As many of you might know, we were thrilled to reconstitute the larger Alumni Honorary Committee about 1.5 years ago. The committee has been meeting regularly throughout this time. And for tonight's celebration, the committee brainstormed about ways to make this 25th year even more festive than usual. We wanted to add a few unique touches to make the celebration extra special. One idea was a branding logo, and as you can see in this beautiful poster board to my right, we held a contest with several different logos, and the committee chose this classic, iconic logo. The 25th anniversary is within the arch. We then took that logo and resurrected the classic enamel pins from years ago that you should have all received, and we thank our very own Kate Stoneman Chair in Law and Democracy, Professor Mary Lynch, for that idea and her constant inspiration. Please be sure to wear your pin proudly tonight and in the years to come. I mentioned the group photo. Another great idea by committee member Professor Pat Rahan and others was to start a new tradition at the 25th anniversary to honor keynote speakers who have passed on. Today we honor two such keynoters who happen to both be judges. We've honored them inside the program today. Judge Constance Baker Motley was our keynote honoree in 1997. Judge Baker Motley wrote the first brief in the Brown v. Board of Education case in the Supreme Court. She was the first Black woman to hold a federal clerkship. Additionally, she was the first African-American woman in history to argue before the United States Supreme Court. In fact, she has that in common with our keynoter today, Barbara Underwood, a trailblazer who just last week argued in the United States Supreme Court on the important case against the citizenship question on the 2020 census. We also want to honor Justice Patricia Mcgowan Wald, who was our keynote honoree in 2011. Judge Wald died this past January. Formerly, she was the chief judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, and she'd been widely lauded in life, receiving many honors. She'd also been the U.S. representative to the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. When we invited her, along with all the other awardees, to join our Kate Stoneman Honorary Committee, she wrote a beautiful handwritten letter in which she recalled fondly, quote, her time at Albany Law School to become acquainted and associated with the wonderful Stoneman legacy. Each year going forward, we will honor other recipients who are no longer with us. Lastly, the special touch for tonight that we're very excited about came about at an honorary committee meeting last fall. At that meeting, Betsy Katz Toohey, the daughter of our beloved Cathy Katz, as well as Amy Kellogg, class of 2002, generously offered to fund a Catherine D. Katz Student Prize for the 25th anniversary. They challenged our current law students to describe how Kate Stoneman has inspired them and what would she be fighting for had she been alive today. The students were encouraged to use any medium to describe their inspiration, and we'll have more about that amazing contest very shortly. We are also grateful to Betsy and her family for additional support for some of these extra special touches and from the Catherine Katz Endowed Fund. Thank you so much. At this time, I am delighted to introduce to you my colleague of 18 years, Ann Ardeen. She is only the second female dean and president in Albany Law School history. She has helped inspire the law school in so many ways. Please give thanks and a warm welcome to Dean Alicia Louette.
Hi, everybody. Happy Kate Stoneman Day. So welcome to one of Albany Law School's most long-standing and important traditions, Kate Stoneman Day and the Kate Stoneman Day Awards. We have many special guests here in the room. We have distinguished judges, attorneys, friends, our former awardees, and we are really glad to have you all. I'm not going to try to name you because that would just get me in trouble, but you are all very welcome here today. Thank you for coming and celebrating with us. Albany Law School's first Kate Stoneman Day was held in 1994, and that was my final year, my fourth year as a law student. And that year, the keynote speaker was the Honorable Judith Kaye, the first female chief judge of the state of New York. This was especially important to me as I look back because Judge Kaye became a mentor and a friend and a real inspiration to me throughout my career. In the years since, Albany Law School has conferred Kate Stoneman Awards on dozens upon dozens of people who have sought change and expanded opportunities for women in the law. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Civil Rights Trailblazer Judge Constance Baker Motley, we just heard about, And the Honorable Elizabeth Gary, our presiding justice for the Third Department, and many, many more. The list goes on and on. Look in the program. It's a really great group of people. All of our award winners have embodied the spirit of Kate Stoneman, who was denied admittance to the bar in New York solely because she was a woman. But Kate Stoneman wouldn't take no for an answer. She persisted. She lobbied to change our laws so that no person would again be denied admittance based on gender or race. That same month, in May of 1886, she reapplied and became New York's first woman lawyer. Kate Stoneman would later shatter the barriers here at Albany Law School, becoming the first woman admitted and the first to graduate. It's a legacy that we're extremely proud to carry. I see Kate Stoneman every day in my job. I see Kate Stoneman in our students. I see Kate Stoneman in our faculty. I see Kate Stoneman in our colleagues, in our staff, in our alumni, in our award winners, past and present. It's a great place to work when you have that kind of inspiration around you every single day. And we're proud today to honor our keynote speaker, Barbara Underwood, the Solicitor General of the state of New York, as well as two Albany Law School alumni, Kelley Ross Brown and my friend and former colleague, Patty Salkin. Their messages are sure to be inspiring, thought-provoking, and galvanizing. So it's an honor to have you all here to share this important day for Albany Law School, the 25th anniversary of Kate Stoneman Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, for those great remarks on this special day. And it is now my absolute honor to start presenting awards. The awardees tonight are impressive and inspirational. They have bravely paved paths for us as we rest upon their shoulders and walk in their footsteps. So many parallels exist between the awardees today and our very own Kate Stoneman in their pioneering and trailblazing spirits. Our first award winner is Kelley Ross Brown, Albany Law Class of 1991. She is a partner at the firm Woods, Oviatt, and Gilman, where she has implemented policies to support women and to support caretakers. She is described by her colleagues as a fierce and tireless advocate for the retention, advancement, promotion, and personal development of women in the legal profession, and she makes it her personal mission to expand opportunities for those women currently in the profession, as well as those considering entering it. Kelley implemented and oversees the Women's Initiative program at her firm, which has various important components: mentoring, job flexibility for caretakers, good benefits, marketing for women attorneys, and the retention and promotion of qualified women attorneys. Reading her nomination packet was overwhelmingly inspiring in so many ways. One of her nominators, Larissa LaRocca, said, "This past year, I was so gratified to see the firm name Kelley as its first woman attorney on the firm's management committee in its 167-year history. The breaking of that glass ceiling has inspired all of the remaining 36 women attorneys at the firm to strive even harder to achieve their own goals within and outside of the office. When I review the nomination criteria for the 2019 Kate Stoneman Awards, there is not a single other woman attorney who I can think of that more richly deserves this honor." Will you please join me at the podium?
Woo, just had a surge of adrenaline there. Sorry if I should probably also find my glasses. It'll be a good thing. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. And thank you to Professor Rieger for your introduction of me this evening. I would also like to thank the Greater Rochester Association of Women Attorneys, members of my firm, and also Law New York, who participated in nominating me for this award. And I'd also like to thank the Kate Stoneman Committee as well. It is a truly humbling experience, and it is my honor to be here with you for the Kate Stoneman Day at Albany Law School. So in thinking about my remarks to you today, I've been reflecting on my path here, and I've enjoyed some time roaming the halls and taking myself back to when I was a student here. And I thought that I might share some of that path with you now. So I'm going to start with a bit of history. After years of being a stay-at-home mom, my mother, Mary Ross, who's right in front of me now, went to law school when I was a 12-year-old middle schooler. And we lived in Pittsburgh at the time, and this path was something that she and my dad had planned for and agreed on. But when she told me that she was going to law school, however, I was extremely upset about it. And I remember throwing, a bit of a tantrum. My main argument was, well, who's going to be home when I get home from school? I remember saying that to her. None of my other friends' mothers worked. The only one I could think of in the whole neighborhood was my friend Carolyn's mom, whose mother sold Avon in the neighborhood. To top it off, this going to law school business meant that I shouldered more of the household chores. As the oldest child, I regularly made dinner on the weeknights and did the laundry on the weekends so that Mom could have time to get her schoolwork done. I was the first one home on the bus, so I could be there for my younger brother and sister when they came home. So it was quite a change at that time. And because my mom was such a novelty in 1979, parents of friends of mine would often tell me that they were sure I would be an attorney when I grew up. And I would routinely answer, no way. You should see the books that my mother reads. I mean, they are this thick. Entirely too much homework, as far as I was concerned. So in short, for a few years, I did not appreciate the life lessons and the opportunities that my mother's budding law career was going to provide to me. My mother graduated law school in 1982 and began working as an associate at Harder Seacrest in Rochester, and she was an unusual associate in that she was about the same age as many of her partners and upper-level associates there. And that was kind of nice for her. She kind of fit right in. She became a partner there, too, and that occurred when I was a student here at Albany Law, so the prophecy was correct, apparently. Unlike my mother, however, I went right from college to law school, and I did not bring to the table at that time a real-world knowledge and sense of self that my mother had when she started. I did, however, have my mom for support and counsel. So when I had a crisis of confidence during my career, my mom would be there to assure me that I had the mental toughness to continue and succeed as I married and eventually started a family, all while working full-time as an attorney. And eventually I became a partner at Woodsovia Gilman. I was the third woman in the firm's history to become partner, but at that time, I was the only woman partner because the other two women who preceded me had left the partnership for family reasons. And through the years, I was troubled that so many women left the profession. And I thought that perhaps a common thread to why women left the profession for varied and legitimate reasons was because they did not feel supported in the way that was most important to them, because it can mean different things to different people. And with this revelation, I thought to myself, how lucky am I? I said, I had my mom as an example and there for support. She was always there for me. And she did what she set out to do, and she succeeded as an attorney. So I have my own Kate Stoneman. So I'm starting to get verklempt. I'm going to stop that. So, okay. So I decided that at that point, it was my job to pay it forward and to do my best to support and advocate for, counsel, and mentor the women attorneys in my firm. And we created the Women's Initiative program to provide various levels of support with the concept of flexibility and accountability, because it used to be that, you know, it only counted if you were in the office. We created and expanded our unique marketing opportunities for women, mainly because I am a terrible golfer. Just ask my husband, he'll tell you all about it. And we also focus on retaining and promoting our qualified women attorneys. And I am pleased to report that since our work started in 2009, we now have 8 women partners and 26 women attorneys at the firm, and I intend to see those numbers increase. And while I have singled my mother out here in this story, I would be remiss if I did not also express my deep appreciation to my husband, Chris, and my daughters, Madeline and Catherine, and my dad, Mel Ross, for everything they have done to support me in my profession as well, because it hasn't been easy. And lastly, I would also like to remember and thank publicly Professor Howard T. Sproul, who is my friend, who is no longer with us, but who bothered to take an interest in a faint-of-heart 1L law student in 1988 and helped her to gain the confidence she was looking for to succeed here at Albany. So, thank you all for this recognition.
You can come here. Thank you for that, Ms. Brown, for your record of extraordinary achievements and commitment to the ideals of Kate Stoneman. We are honored to present you with the 2019 Kate Stoneman Award.
Thank you very much.
I think there's a couple misty eyes in the room. We're going to keep doing this to you. Our next award winner is another extraordinary woman and someone near and dear to so many of us here at Albany Law School. She's an alum, a former professor, and the former director of the Government Law Center. We are so thrilled to honor Provost Patricia Salkin, known to most of us as Patty. Here to introduce her tonight is my dear colleague, Professor Janine Taranto.
Thank you, Melissa. It is truly an honor for me to introduce Patty Salkin as a recipient of the Kate Stoneman Award. Anyone who knows Patty would be very well aware of the fact that it is a daunting, if not impossible task to briefly describe or somehow summarize all of Patty's successes, examples of her continued commitment to seeking change and expanding opportunities for women in the law, as well as the attributes that she possesses that make her a deserving recipient of this reward and award. So rather than list all of these amazing and meaningful things that we already know about her, instead I have chosen to focus on one thing and to emphasize that one thing that makes her so very deserving of the Kate Stoneman Award. And I say the one thing, that was also a very difficult task to choose that one thing that would encapsulate and capture the essence of Patty. And that one thing is something that comes from the very heart, nature, and character of who Patty is. So to give you some insight into what this is, I hope you will indulge a bit of a short story here. Nearly 31 years ago, I walked into the Pieper Bar Review course, a stranger among 3 or so dozen Albany Law students, who are all friends and acquaintances of one another. And as chance would have it, I chose a seat front row center next to a woman who recognized that I was a stranger in the room and did not know others. So guess who it was? It was Patty, and in typical Patty fashion, she introduced herself to me and befriended me. She asked me to join her and friends for study breaks, and before I knew it, we were studying together and did so for the duration. All the while, Howie kept us well-fed and calm and all very cheery with all of your great sense of humor, right? Patty, I will always remember Bar Review Jeopardy in the study rooms at the med school, and that one night when our conversation, for some reason, led to a discussion about the meaning of life and then a conversation about death. Perhaps it had to do with the fact that we were facing the bar in maybe 3 or 4 days or so. I still can't figure that one out. But what is more memorable than that time is that in the 31 years that followed, as I watched you, Patty, succeed to greatness and do phenomenal things, amazingly, I saw that you did not simply forge straight ahead for your own gain and benefit. Rather, with each step of your success, you turned around and circled back and brought so many women and others with you on your journey to success. I was one of those women. So to make a very long story short, had it not been for Patty, I would not be standing here today, a member of the law school faculty, fulfilling my lifelong dream to teach. Patty encouraged me and believed in me, most importantly, at times when I did not believe in myself. To say that Patty has had a profound impact on my life is an understatement, to say the least. I will be forever grateful to her. And as I said, my story is just one of many others. Women, students, all who look to Patty for their success and appreciate it and will never forget her. So that one thing about Patty, it's the character to circle back and use her success to help other women succeed. And for no other reason but because she wants to. It's important to her, and she sees it as the right thing to do. She always has. Given what I have read about Kate Stoneman and what I know about Patty, I often think that they would have been the best of friends. Their common bond found in the attributes that they share: character, integrity, courage, determination, and commitment to furthering women and others in their quest for success in the law. And how appropriate for you, Patty, to receive this award on the 25th anniversary of its inception, given that you, with others, worked tirelessly to make the Kate Stoneman program a reality. Patty, thank you for circling back and taking me and so many other women with you on your incredible journey. How lucky we have all been. So thank you, my colleague, my advisor, and most importantly, my treasured friend. You never cease to inspire.
I don't know if I can top that. Janine, thank you very much for that generous and over-the-top introduction. And congratulations on your recent promotion. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge my classmate, Diane Phillips, for her support and her hand in the nomination. And of course, our triple threat partner, Donna Wardlaw. Thank you both for being there at the birth of the Kate Stoneman Chair. Thank you to my friends and former colleagues at Albany Law School, especially those associated with today's event, Professor Brager, Dean Willett, Professor Lynch, and the entire Stoneman Committee. And let me add my personal congratulations to Kelley Ross Brown and Barbara Underwood. An important person missing, though not forgotten, is the inspirational mentor to many of us, Professor Cathy Katz. Thank you, Betsy, for continuing to support the work that your mom started and for being a continuing part of her legacy. And I just want everybody to see that I'm wearing the bracelet that was Cathy's that Betsy gave to me when she passed. And I always treasure it for what it stands for. Thank you very much. I like to think that Kate Stoneman lived her life's journey well. She made a difference. Among other things, she helped to make it possible for the women of New York to be at the point we are today. She was a strong advocate and recognized that the journey is a marathon and not a sprint. She was in it for the long run, and she was not afraid to stand up for what she believed was fair and just. And to think that she accomplished what she did in the late 1880s without a computer, a cell phone, instant messaging, and sophisticated data-driven grassroots lobbying. She did it the old-fashioned way, by speaking with people, writing to people, and having the tenacity not to give up on justice. She was also a part of what today we call a network of women, beginning in the 1860s, who took up the cause across the country to open the legal profession to women. Back then, it was the husbands and brothers of the pioneering women who opened their law practices to enable their wives and sisters to apprentice, while only 6 law schools between the 1870s and 1880s dared to let women study law. We should not, however, sit back and say, wow, times have changed, and just be pleased. It would also be unfathomable to have a Kate Stoneman Day in this state without acknowledging another New York legend that the dean already acknowledged, the Honorable Judith Kay of blessed memory, who received this inaugural award 25 years ago. I went back to reread her speech titled, quote, "How to Accomplish Success, the Example of Kate Stoneman," and reflected on her dismay that in all these years, women still lagged behind men in the legal profession, and public policy and legal issues of concern for women were woefully slow to advance, if at all. I don't have to go through the stats that are annually reported by the ABA and the State Bar and others that continually point out what the data reveals. All of us in this room still have much to do to complete the unfinished work that Kate Stoneman and her pioneering colleagues started, and that our fabulous Judith Kay wanted so profoundly to advance with greater strides than what she was able to witness in her lifetime. My proudest professional moment was when Judge Kay delivered the keynote address at the convocation for my deanship, accompanied, of course, by our dear friend, the Honorable Victoria Graffio. And after all, Judge Kay taught us that we could all wear red. And I even bought the shoes tonight to prove it. My own journey has been marked with triumphs along the way that I will share, but it's critical for me to point out that no person does it alone. The greatest contribution one can make as a teacher and a scholar is to use our platform to make a positive difference in the lives of people we know and countless generations of people we will never meet. When you lift another woman up, there's no telling how high she will fly. The ROI on people, students, alumni, colleagues, family, and friends is the absolute best investment that we can make in ensuring a sustainable tomorrow. This is why I'm grateful for the opportunities that have come along my way, and why I've been driven to help others achieve their promise and goals. I have incredible parents who sacrifice much and who have always been inspiring role models to your children and your grandchildren. You didn't see ceilings for your daughters. Rather, you've always supported our dreams and encouraged a sky's the limit philosophy. And my sister Robin, thank you too for your support and encouragement. I knew by high school I was going to be a lawyer, and I knew I wanted to do things that would help people and society. There was also a pull to education. I guess it was in my DNA since both of my parents were educators. I was drawn early on to government and public policy as I saw it as the most important vehicle for making change. I was lucky to gain experience working in Washington for Congressman Benjamin Gilman, in Albany for AG Robert Abrams, State Senator Charles Cook, and Governor Mario Cuomo. For those attuned to politics, you already figured out that I worked equally for Republicans and Democrats. To me, it didn't matter. What matters is that we all work together to find common ground to advance the causes that will help people and advance community and societal needs. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge my college roommate and friend Sandra Dorley, the DA of Monroe County, for joining us here tonight. You also have committed yourself to a career in public service. It was the time that I spent at Albany Law School and the platform of the Government Law Center in particular that was truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a profound and lasting impact on public policy, law, and society. When Dean John Baker handed me the gift of becoming director of the GLC at such an early point in my professional career, I vowed I would not waste the opportunity. For just over 2 decades, the privilege of working with governors, attorneys general, senators and assembly members, judges, agency heads and legal counsel, and attorneys who represented various stakeholders combined to make incredible experiences and resulted in my words and ideas found easily in at least 50 statutes and regulations. For just a fleeting moment, I thought I had achieved what I set out to do when I walked through these doors in 1985. But I had a higher calling. I could not escape the respect, admiration, and hope that I had for my students. From the very beginning, I saw my students as the ones who would go out next and make a positive impact on the world, the ones who were open to my sometimes half-baked ideas about land use and community development, government ethics, aging and longevity, and federalism issues, to name a few. The ones who would work with me on research and writing to create lasting legacies, and the ones who would take care of each other to help create the network of public and private sector lawyers who understand the art of lawmaking and reasoned advocacy. It's important to invest in the ones, and this is why my husband and I have created and funded scholarships at Albany and Truro, as well as other institutions of higher education, and we challenge you all to do the same. We all have an obligation to support access to education for those who follow us so that they too can be the Kate Stoneman of tomorrow. And as the dean has been going around the state and the country, I agree, we rise together. Would everyone here today who worked at the Government Law Center with me and former Chairman Bill Redmond as professional staff or student or advisory board member, please rise? I want to thank you all for being an important part of my life and for working with me to carry forward the spirit of Kate Stoneman in advocating for appropriate change. In 2012, after careful deliberation and with incredible unwavering support on the home front, I broke from what was a comfortable routine and took my passion for higher education to a new level. In late 2011, a call about Truro College and the Jacob D. Fuchsberg Law Center changed my life, and herein lies the lesson. If we only keep doing what is comfortable and seemingly easy, we will never realize our full potential for impact. Women tend to lag behind men in terms of taking risks and facing fearlessly the unknown. I was determined not to be one of those women. I'm grateful to Truro College President Dr. Alan Kadish and Executive Vice President Rabbi Moshe Krupka, along with the faculty of the Law Center, for believing in me and selecting me for the awesome responsibility of stewarding a truly great mission-focused law school that aligned 100% with my own values and vision. I was able to find ways to combine the best of the promise of the Government Law Center, my love of teaching and legal education, and my passion to lift others up so that they could fly, and I truly hit a new stride on the higher education landscape. Following quickly on the heels of a fulfilling, and I believe successful deanship, the opportunity to become provost for the college's graduate and professional divisions, something that hadn't really existed before, has been a professionally rewarding move and a role I cherish as it allows me to be me, collaborative, creative, student-focused, supportive of colleagues, and advancing the mission of an institution aligned with my traditions, my values, and my beliefs. So to the women and men who are given professional opportunities, let me be an example of the great things that come with saying yes. Too often, people say no out of fear of the unknown and efforts to try to figure everything out in advance. It's impossible. What is possible is to grab hold of the opportunity and own it. Define it yourself in some way in the service of others, and you too will have a rewarding career and journey. Thank you, Rabbi Krupka and Linda Howard Weissman from the law school for sharing tonight with me and my family. The dedication to the book I edited on pioneering women lawyers more than a decade ago read in part, quote, "This book is dedicated to my children, Sydney and Jordan Gross, who I hope will be inspired in their generation to continue the vigilance and action that will lead to ensuring gender, ethnic, race, and religious equality throughout their lifetime." Let me pause to say I could not be prouder of both of you. Sydney, who's about to become a rising 3L at Toro Law Center and who has grown into a stupendous advocate for all aspects of children and the law, and she too said, "I'm never going to law school." You live up to your BTMAD license plate daily, BTMAD, born to make a difference. And Jordan, our actor and creative conscience, who never lets a day go by without helping others and caring to make this world a better place. I think your heart is bigger than your body. Dad and I love you too, and you inspire us to be better every day. Speaking of Dad, the book dedication concludes, quote, "Lastly, this book would not be a reality without the support and encouragement of my spouse and partner, Howard Gross, who has removed barriers of entry and glass ceilings for women and men, and who has been an inspirational and tireless advocate for individuals with disabilities. It is true, and my family and close friends know it. I would not be where I am today without the caring and supportive wind beneath my wings. Thank you for your patience and for being my #1 cheerleader and my better half always." The easy decisions we make are the inconsequential ones. It's the hard decisions, such as when to advocate hard for change and when to slow down, when to stand up for what is right when it may be unpopular at the time, when to stop doing what's easy and start doing what you perceive to be more challenging. These are the decisions where we can go from good to great. Don't let others define you and your potential. We were all put here to do good and to make a difference. Don't just keep the pilot light on, fueling your passion, but turn up the fire. We need everyone to use their talents daily to continue to work for our freedoms that we should never take for granted. We live in a contentious era in history when there is more focus on hatred than love and differences rather than similarities. Tomorrow is Yom HaShoah, or Holocaust Remembrance Day. How can we forget when we're experiencing continuing rise in anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim feelings, less tolerance for religious feelings, freedom for all, and more negative judgment about people based on race, religion, and gender than in most of the lifetimes of the people in this room? Let me end with Kate Stoneman's message to younger women, quote, "They must take their opportunities as they come. Always there are opportunities to be had." So friends, let's take whatever opportunities we have to be the ones to make a positive difference and lift each other up. We only have each other. Thank you.
for your record of extraordinary achievements and commitment to the ideals of Kate Stoneman. We are honored to present you with the 2019 Kate Stoneman Award. Please join me in another round of applause for our 2019 Kate Stoneman Day recipients. We're almost about to get to the keynote, but I wanted to share a very special treat, and I see someone in the audience who just made it, so this is good. As I mentioned earlier, Betsy Katz-Toohey and Amy Kellogg endowed a special contest for our students. The subcommittee had the pleasure to read through inspiring poems, groundbreaking legal research, and other creative ways to honor Kate Stoneman. At this time, I'm so proud to list the honorable mentions in alphabetical order. These law students exhibited such creativity and insight in their impressive responses to the contest. Victoria Kraft, Charlene Joseph, Julia Kazaneski, Mary Ann Krissa, Beryl Mansky, Elizabeth Murad, Katrina Young, Nicole Zagreda. If you could stand if you're in the audience so we could applaud you. You would all be proud if you read these submissions. We did have to choose two winners, and we have our first and second place winner here today. Rebecca Wager, class of 2019, the designer of this beautiful dress. Please join us. Our second place winner, Nihala Zaruk, also class of 2019, who wrote a beautiful children's book. And could we have you join us? Would you mind joining us? I'll describe their amazing contest first, but first I want to give them a chance to be with the Just to give you a little more detail, I didn't want them to have to stand here while I went through all of their brilliance, but Rebecca created this gorgeous and impactful creation, and it will be displayed at the reception, and Becca invites you all to sign the blazer, along with the incredible documents decorating Kate here. As she indicates in her artist statement, today Kate Stoneman would be working for the removal of barriers that women face today when entering the legal community, particularly for women who have multiple intersections of identity at race, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, and class. In this interactive artwork, I have reconstructed the successes and barriers that women within the legal profession have experienced and the values that would fuel Kate's 21st century intersectional quest for equality. As you progress visually to the body of her skirt, there are the court cases that have been pivotal to the rights of women throughout the last century, along with statistics of women in the legal profession and other interesting documents promoting inclusion and intersectionality. At the bottom of her dress, in shreds, you may notice court cases and other mementos from the past that previously have limited the rights of women and other marginalized groups. How impressive is this? Again, we'll carry that down to the reception. Neela created a beautiful children's book for her own children called Kate and the Elephant. It's displayed here. It will also be on display at the reception. In her preface, she states, "I was immediately enthralled by Kate's perseverance. I was drawn to her story as I could empathize with the challenges she had faced. Her career in law was a second career, as is mine, and she's had to balance not only work and home, but also be a catalyst for social change. Whenever I question why I'm on this path, I walk up to the Kate Stoneman display at Albany Law School, and I am inspired once again. I wanted to share her story with my young daughters. In order to accomplish this, I simplified the core messages of Kate Stoneman's legacy so they could be inspired by her just as I was. I decided to accomplish this through a book written for children." Tremendous work. These students had so much inspiration and creativity, and we're just so happy that you entered the contest, and thank you to our funders. And now, it is time to hear from our 2019 keynote. The 2019 Miriam M. Netter Kate Stoneman Award recipient is the Solicitor General of the State of New York, Barbara Underwood. She will be introduced by another great colleague of ours, Professor Andy Ayers, Director of the GLC, and we are especially grateful to Andy for connecting us to our keynote today and inviting her to join us. Please come on inspired.
Thank you so much. And as the current director of the Government Law Center, I owe more than I could ever say to Patty Salkin. I get to go to work every day in the palace that she built, and my extensive study of the history of the Government Law Center leads me to conservatively estimate that the woman you just saw was one of about 5 to 7 Patty Salkins, all of whom produce an incredible amount of scholarship, research, and all of whom are no doubt equally inspiring, although I'm quite fond of this one. So when you say someone is a trailblazer, it not only speaks well of them, but also badly of the landscape through which the trail had to be blazed. Barbara changed the landscape as she moved through it. From 1971 to 72, she clerked for Justice Thurgood Marshall. She was amazingly the 4th woman to clerk for the U.S. Supreme Court. She then became the 2nd woman to receive tenure at Yale Law School. She taught there for 10 years and then shocked academics everywhere, and is still shocking academics by leaving that job to go and work in the Brooklyn DA's office when Liz Holtzman became Brooklyn DA in 1981. She wisely put Barbara in charge of appeals. Before that time, there had been no female DA in New York City. And according to a news story in that particular office, quote, "not one woman in the DA's office was in charge of anything." That same article described Liz Holtzman as, quote, "trim, attractive, and unmarried." So that was the climate into which Barbara entered the career of a prosecutor. She served honorably and admirably in several prosecutors' offices before becoming, in 1998, the principal deputy solicitor general of the United States. She was the first woman to hold that position. 3 years later, she became acting solicitor general of the United States, again, the first woman to do so. I also note the solicitor general of the United States is the only official in the federal government required by law to be, quote, learned in the law. I suspect Barbara is the only one in the room who's ever been required by law to be learned in it. For me, it's expected, but not legally required. In 2007, Attorney General Andrew Cuomo appointed her Solicitor General of New York. In 2011, she became, as far as my research can tell, the first Solicitor General ever to be reappointed to the position by a new incoming Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman. Of course, as we know, in 2018, news reports revealed that Schneiderman had sexually assaulted numerous women. Barbara became acting Attorney General, and the state legislature confirmed her as the 66th Attorney General of the state of New York. Again, the first woman to hold that position. Picture these 65 men lined up before her, and own your feelings about that. Barbara made clear that she had no interest in running for re-election to that position. She would prefer to return to her beloved appellate practice, and Attorney General Tish James appointed her again as Solicitor General of the state of New York, the position she holds now. She has argued more than 20 cases in the U.S. Supreme Court, the most recent one last Tuesday, and endless cases in other appellate courts. I teach legal ethics, and I think ceremonies like this can be wonderful occasions, not just to honor people we admire, but to reflect on why we admire them and to further our own moral development. So I just want to mention 3 things that I admire immensely about Barbara. One of them being her good judgment, which almost everyone seems to recognize. It's one of the, maybe the only thing that everyone in New York State's government seems to agree on. When I was in the Attorney General's office working under Barbara, just about the most persuasive thing I could say in any disagreement was, "This is what Barbara thinks." Some people think that good judgment can't be learned, that you either have it or you don't, something I've sometimes found to be said in a macho way, you have it or you don't. But I think good judgment can be learned, and I discovered that in part working under Barbara, that reflecting thoughtfully on the judgments that you've made in the past and the experiences you've had can make your judgment better and better over time. And Barbara reflects thoughtfully and well in ways that few people do. I've never seen anyone else in a heated meeting say, "Can I think for a minute?" and then grow silent to do that. It works very, very well. You can even reflect under fire, and Barbara does. The second thing I wanted to mention is her commitment to doing what's necessary to serve the public. Some people were surprised by what happened when Barbara became AG. I remember hearing some commentators say, well, this is a quiet appellate lawyer who's never made a splash. One wonders if she has what it takes to stand up to the Trump administration. Then she stepped into the role and suddenly became what one headline called Barbara Underwood Liberal Heroine. For the vigor and excellence with which she pursued high-profile cases against the Trump administration and the Trump Foundation. Those of us who know her thought that was funny because the suggestion was that it was Trump that had motivated her to do those cases rather than the fact that she thought that was what was in the best interests of the people of New York. It wasn't being a heroine that drew her. It wasn't politics that drew her. It was that in her judgment, this was what had to be done for the public that she served. She's always been the same person, whatever the role. And so the third thing I want to mention is her lack of interest in power and glory. Some people in public life, and maybe elsewhere, seem hungry to be reminded of their own importance on a regular basis. You may have noticed this. In contrast, when a reporter, after her ascension to the Attorney General role, asked Barbara's team how it felt to work under a woman, she interjected, "Could we say working with?" It really bothers me when we talk about working under. So I've stopped saying I worked under Barbara, even though I certainly did. Nor does she care much about the glory. She spent much of her career doing inspiring work just outside the spotlight. She was Liz Holtzman's chief of appeals. She was the principal deputy U.S. Solicitor General. She was the Attorney General who just wanted to go back to being Solicitor General instead of running for higher office. I think we should praise the principal deputies. I think we should praise all the people just outside the spotlight who do their jobs well for the sake of doing their jobs well. Once when we told Barbara, you know, this case, we're almost certain to lose, she said, well, that's okay, that's more of a reason for me to be the one who does the oral argument. If someone in the office is going to be the face of a public loss, it may as well be me. Can you imagine a public official who thinks that losing is her job rather than the people who work under her? And we loved her for it. I see a lot of my dearly beloved colleagues here, and I can't wait to catch up with them. So I will report, not saying whether it's anyone here, that late one night, fairly far along into the Stoneman nominations cycle, I got a call on my cell phone from somebody representing a cabal of attorneys in the Attorney General's office who said, we have been thinking about nominating Barbara for the Kate Stoneman Award, but we know how these things go. Sometimes, the nomination period may still be open, but there may be someone in mind. Well, there was someone in mind. We had already reached out to Barbara to offer her the award. Look, the nomination cycle is iterative. It's not a fraud. It's a real thing. I probably shouldn't have said any of this. It's just that you take nominations and people become available and you're honored by the opportunity and you jump on it and you grab it. And I said, she's already getting the award. But don't tell anybody. And they said, thank goodness, we just didn't want, she has a thick skin and everything, but we didn't want her to be nominated and then not get it because she's like family to them. She's like family to all of us who've worked under her. It's an honor to work with someone so beloved by her staff and to speak for so many of the people whose lives she's made an impact on, both those who've been lucky enough to work with her and those who she's served as Solicitor General and in all the other roles that she's played. So please join me in giving the warmest possible welcome to my friend and mentor, Barbara Underwood.
Thank you for that quite wonderful introduction, Andy, and thanks to the Stoneman Committee and to the unnamed people who had something to do or didn't have anything to do with my receiving this award today, and thank you, Dean Willett, and everyone connected with Albany Law School for the great honor you bestow on me today. The award honors Kate Stoneman, a pioneering woman in the law, a graduate of this fine law school, and the first woman to become a member of the New York Bar. That was in 1886. I thought it would be interesting to put Kate Stoneman's accomplishment in historical context. In 1869, not that long before, Arabella Babb Mansfield was the first woman to be admitted to any American state bar. That was in Iowa, where the state Supreme Court struck down the law that made women ineligible to practice law. 3 years later, Myra Bradwell tried and failed to persuade the U.S. Supreme Court to strike down the Illinois ban on the practice of law by women. And then in 1873, the Illinois legislature eliminated the restriction, passing a law that prohibited the exclusion of women from any profession. In 1878, Clara Shortridge Fultz was the first woman to be admitted to the bar in California. She too took the legislative route, persuading the California state legislature to eliminate the restriction. And in 1886, New York's Kate Stoneman, after failing to persuade a court to strike down the restriction, got the state legislature to eliminate it. All over the country, courts and legislatures were gradually, slowly, eliminating the formal legal barrier that prevented women from practicing law. It would take longer, in fact, it's still going on, to overcome the informal cultural barriers and employment practices that obstruct women's participation in the profession. Stanford's Professor Barbara Babcock, a historian of women in the legal profession, reports that by 1890, there were 208 women lawyers in the United States, according to the census, an institution for which I have a new fondness. That's 208 women out of 89,422 lawyers altogether. And by 1902, women had gained admission to a majority, just a majority, of state bars, though the numbers stayed small until about 1972 or so. And now there are so many women lawyers that it's hard for many people, particularly today's law students, to believe how widespread the notion once was that women are unsuited to the practice of law. It's worth taking a moment to remember the concurring opinion of Justice Bradley in Myra Bradwell's case. He wrote, "The natural and proper timidity and delicacy which belongs to the female sex evidently unfits it for many of the occupations of civil life, including the practice of law." That was in 1872. You may suppose that such thoughts are unthinkable today, and maybe they are, but I can report that about 100 years later, in about 1972, someone said something very similar to me. I was clerking for Chief Judge David Bazelon at the DC Circuit and applying for a position as a law clerk with Justice Thurgood Marshall. Like many justices, he had a group of former law clerks screening applicants for him around the country. And I was invited to an interview with the lawyer who was playing that role for him in DC. I went to the interview and listened for a half hour while the lawyer talked about himself. At the end of that time, the lawyer asked me if there was anything else I wanted to know. And I said, "No, but maybe you would like to know something about me." He took a deep breath and said, "Yes, actually, there is. Don't get the wrong idea about this. My partners told me not to ask this question." And at this point, I braced for some question about my marriage or my plans for starting a family or something like that. And then came the question, "How do you feel about dirty jokes?" I said, "I laugh when they're funny and not when they aren't." "This is serious," said the lawyer. "The justice likes to tell off-color jokes, and it's important for him to feel comfortable telling jokes to his clerks. Also, he likes his clerks to add to his repertoire. And this," he said, "is not a sexist question. I wouldn't send a prissy man to the justice either." "Well," I said, "you can ask Judge Bazelon about that. He seems to feel free to tell off-color jokes in my presence." And I walked out thinking that was the end of that clerkship. A week or so later, the justice's secretary called to invite me for an interview with the justice. My fellow law clerks at the Court of Appeals, having heard about my prior experience, began to tell me one dirty joke after another. For possible use during the interview. I memorized a few, but I couldn't really imagine using them, and I have fortunately forgotten them all today. When I walked into his chambers for the interview, the justice walked over to me and said, evidently having heard something of this, "I hear there's been some nonsense about my not wanting a woman around here. Well, that's a lot of bullshit." And he proceeded to ask me what I thought of a recent opinion of his. We had a great discussion, and he offered me the job. So we made some progress in 100 years. Justice Marshall didn't think women were too delicate to work with him, even though a member of his screening committee did. Here's another story about what it was like to be a pioneer woman from just a year later. I arrived at Yale as a new assistant professor of law in August of 1972. And there weren't many people around the law school building in August. I had a small office in what was once a dormitory room. I looked around for a nearby ladies' room, and all I found that looked promising was a door marked faculty. So I thought, I'm faculty. I asked the other newcomer, a man, just down the hall, what was behind that door, and he said a restroom. He'd been told it was a men's room, but there were no urinals, just stalls. And he said, I don't see why you can't use it too. I thought that was a pretty good idea, but I didn't really know who else might be using that restroom or might be upset since there was nobody around. So I put up a sign. This is to advise you that starting 1 week from today, I intend to use this faculty restroom unless I hear a substantial objection. Pretty soon after the sign went up, there was a dean's cocktail party for faculty returning from summer vacation. And after the party, the younger faculty, all men, invited me to join them at a local restaurant. I arrived, I was the last one to arrive, and as I sat down at this table with 6 or 7 youngish men, they bombarded me with questions about the sign. How long have you been obsessed with bathrooms? Why was your first move on arriving at Yale to start a bathroom revolution? Why, if you wanted to use the faculty men's room, did you choose such a hostile way of saying so? Why did you put up a sign instead of going door to door to ask people's permission? I said I just wanted to use a restroom near my office, and this room seemed like the most likely candidate, and I made a mental note to look elsewhere for friends at Yale. The next day, I had a visit from the person I will always think of as Dean of Bathrooms. He said, "You know, there's an unused restroom just down the hall from you. How about if we clean it up and install a mirror and label it a ladies' room? Would that work?" I said, yes, that would be fine. And so it happened. Nobody said a word about the incident to me for several months. And then, one day, in December, Ruth Ginsburg, then a Columbia Law School professor, came to talk at Yale, and I was asked to drive her to the train station. And on the way, she said to me, "You know, I was at a meeting of the restatement of judgments recently, and I heard a strange story about you." She said, "Someone said the new young woman professor at Yale has started a campaign to let women into the men's rooms. Is that true?" So I told her what happened. We had a good chuckle. I dropped her off at the train station, and I thought my academic career is about to end before it begins, because I will forevermore be known only for trying to integrate the bathrooms. So I retired that story for many years while I set about building my reputation in more traditional ways. I brought this story out of retirement lately because, as I believe Ruth Ginsburg says in one of the RBG movies that came out this year, it turns out that every pioneering woman has a bathroom story. And it's true. Whenever you're the first woman someplace, there's always a problem about bathrooms. You know, we don't have any women's rooms near where you're going to sit. I have been getting recognition lately for a number of firsts. First woman SG for the United States, first woman AG for New York. When people talk about that, I think of a New Yorker cartoon I had on my refrigerator 40 years ago. And people in my office, after hearing me talk about this cartoon, have dug it up for me, and I now have it again. A cartoon in which one little girl says to another, "I'm afraid by the time I grow up, it will be too late to be the first woman anything." Well, those little girls are grown up now, and it's still not too late to be the first woman anything. But at least we're making some progress. I want to mention one more first, not so widely known. I was the first person to bring a nursing infant to a Supreme Court argument and leave him playing on the floor in the clerk's office during the argument with a nanny, not the clerk. Paving the way, I'm told, for other new mothers to do the same. That child, grown up now, couldn't be here today because he's performing in the Yiddish Fiddler on the Roof that just reopened on 42nd Street after a smashing success downtown. I can't resist making a pitch for you all to see the show. And finally, I want to say something about why all these firsts are important, why it matters to have women in positions of leadership in the law and in the rest of society as well. It is not that there is a single woman's point of view that will shift outcomes in some particular predictable direction. Instead, it's that women, like other outsiders, have some important life experiences in common that insiders don't have, and that those experiences can matter in decision-making. And what people do with those experiences and how they form their views of particular issues that may come up, it can vary. It can be different from person to person, but those common experiences make a difference. The Supreme Court, writing about sex discrimination in jury selection in 1946, said, "A flavor, a distinct quality is lost if either sex is excluded from the jury." Thurgood Marshall, writing about race discrimination in jury selection the year I clerked for him, said something similar. He said, "When any large and identifiable segment of the community is excluded from jury service, the effect is to remove from the jury room qualities of human nature and varieties of human experience, the range of which is unknown and perhaps unknowable, a perspective on human events that may have unsuspected importance in any case that may be presented." That was Peters against Kiff, decided in 1972. Justice Marshall was explaining why the exclusion of blacks from juries was harmful not only to black defendants, but to all defendants, and indeed to everyone. And he consciously wrote that opinion in a way that made it applicable to sex discrimination as well. It was the distinctive experience and the distinctive perspective that mattered, not some predictable, distinctive vote. Others have mocked the idea of special flavors or unknowable varieties of experience. Those phrases have come in for a little bit of mockery. Sometimes the critics will say that nothing is lost when you exclude a group from jury service or from anything, because there is no such thing as the black or the female point of view. So if there's no such thing as that point of view, what do you lose? Or sometimes people will say something is lost, but it only hurts the people that would be favored by the black or the female point of view. So it only hurts black defendants to exclude blacks from juries. It only hurts women defendants to exclude women. Justice Marshall knew it was more complicated than that. And I think we are starting to see that he was right. I hope we are starting to see that he was right. Now that some of our important courts have more than one woman judge or more than one black judge, we see that they don't always vote together, and certainly they don't always favor the person who belongs to their group. But even in their differences, they reflect a shared and distinctive life experience, and that experience can shed light on decisions in unexpected ways. An interesting possible example came to my attention some years ago when the federal courts in New York overturned the state murder conviction of a woman, a retired police officer, who'd been convicted of murdering a man she met in a bar and accompanied to a motel. Sometime after they went to the motel, he was shot to death in his van. She and her lawyer discussed the possibility of claiming self-defense, but in the end, she decided to rely on the argument that the prosecutor had failed to prove that she was the shooter rather than another person who was also present. The federal court set aside her conviction, finding that she had been denied effective assistance of counsel because her lawyer didn't advise her to choose yet a third strategy, to claim that she killed the man under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance, which would have reduced the charge from murder to first-degree manslaughter. The decision whether to raise that defense is generally regarded as a strategic decision that should rarely be second-guessed by the courts, because, of course, raising that defense gives up any hope of acquittal in exchange for a better chance of avoiding a conviction for murder. But here the federal courts decided that the lawyer should have counseled her to raise it, and they set aside her conviction. The thing I found interesting about this case is that the 5 federal judges who considered the matter split on gender lines. The male district judge and the 2 men on the Court of Appeals panel saw her and described her as a defenseless and ignorant woman, inadequately advised by her attorney and making an irrational decision. The woman magistrate judge who first heard her federal claim and the woman judge on the appeals panel both flatly rejected the idea that this retired police officer was denied effective assistance of counsel. In their view, she made an informed and reasonable strategic choice, which worked out badly for her. Why this difference? Well, the facts of the case are complex, and the individual judges and their personalities and their views may do most of the explaining here, but it struck me as at least possible that the men and the women on the bench came to this case with different ideas about women and their ability to make reasonable decisions. In any case, I have no doubt that the quality of judicial decision-making in the case was better because the prevailing judges had to hear and contend with the views of their dissenting sisters. Women bring to decision-making a distinctive life experience, and then they each use it differently. Part of that experience is specifically female, and part of it is the experience of being different, of being the only woman in a room of men, like being the only African American in a room of white people, and of struggling to be taken seriously. I'm going to invoke Thurgood Marshall again here. When I was clerking for him, I received an offer of a teaching position at the Yale Law School. I told the judge about it with great excitement, and he said with a smile, "Oh, I know why you got that job. It's the same reason I'm on this court." That story has many meanings, some sad and some brave. The one I like is he understood. Long before there were women on the Supreme Court, Justice Marshall was the one who understood about sex discrimination. He was one of the first justices to hire a woman law clerk, and he insisted on writing his anti-discrimination opinions in a way that condemned not only race discrimination, but sex discrimination as well, over the objection, I might add, of some of his colleagues. In fact, he said it was racist to think blacks were the only people who needed the protection of the anti-discrimination laws. So it seems fitting that it was the first woman Supreme Court justice who made the point about perspectives rather than outcomes in her tribute to the first African American justice. After he left the court, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor wrote that she would miss Justice Thurgood Marshall at conferences because he brought a perspective shaped by his life experiences, and he was constantly pushing and prodding the others to see what he saw. He not only changed the conferences he attended, but even the conferences that took place after he was gone. Justice O'Connor wrote, quote, "Even now, I still catch myself looking expectantly for his raised brow and his twinkling eye, hoping to hear just once more another story that would by and by perhaps change the way I see the world." That's one of the most important challenges of our times, to bring into the courts and the boardrooms and the executive suites in business and in government and the academies and all the institutions of our society, all the voices, to hear the voices of the people who are present and those who are not, and to build the bridges that are needed to unite rather than divide our large and diverse state and our even larger and more diverse nation. Thank you so much for honoring me with this award.
Miss Underwood, for your extraordinary achievement and commitment to the ideals of Kate Stoneman, we bestow upon you the 2019 Miriam Netter Kate Stoneman Award. Such a wonderful, inspirational talk, and what a wonderful, inspirational evening we've shared. In closing, while gender equality is a concept that most people can agree upon theoretically, Kate Stoneman actually personified the concept in reality. She has inspired countless law students, lawyers, and future lawyers. Kate Stoneman and her legacy remind us all of how much progress we have made in the area of gender and the law. Yet, of course, we are reminded every day how much more progress we still need for there to be true gender equality under the law. Thank you all for helping us get there one step at a time. On behalf of Albany Law School, we thank you so much for being with us tonight. Please join us for a cocktail reception in the foyer. Thank you.